customer service, done right, can be your company's single biggest competitive advantage. Welcome to the Customer Service Revolution. Join customer service authority and best-selling author John DiJulius as he interviews leaders who are revolutionizing their industries. This is more than a podcast, though. It's a movement. The Customer Service Revolution is a radical overthrow of conventional business mentality designed to transform what customers and employees experience. If you're a revolutionary customer service leader who's ready to stop competing on price and obsessed with building a brand that people cannot live without, this podcast is for you. Welcome to the Customer Service Revolution podcast with John DiJulius. I'm Denise Thompson, managing partner of the DiJulius Group. In today's episode, John is joined by Jess Pischel, experience consultant for the DiJulius Group and Dean of the Customer Experience Executive Academy. John and Jess are going to talk about how the best customer service companies in the world are so consistent in the experience they deliver because they are brilliant at the basics. Stick around and you'll learn how you can be too by creating a simple customer bill of rights. This is a list that everyone in your organization understands as a set of rules they will always and never do when representing your brand. Now here's your host, John DiJulius.
Hello, revolutionaries. This is John DiJulius, Chief Revolution Officer of the DiJulius Group. And I am so excited. Welcome to another episode of the Customer Service Revolution, episode 42. And my co-host today is Jess Pischel, Customer Experience Consultant with the DiJulius Group and Dean of our Customer Experience Executive Academy. Welcome, Jess.
Hey, John. Thanks.
It's great to have you. I'm really excited about today's topic. I don't know about you, and I probably say this about every topic and every commandment, but I think the one we're doing today, is probably one of our clients' favorite. I think it's easy to do, and it's low-hanging fruit, but it has a really powerful impact. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's probably one of the more simple things to implement with your organization that will create consistency in a short period of time. So if I only have a half day with the client or a 10-minute TED Talk, this is going to be my topic because it's something every company can do.
So that topic is what I like to call the customer bill of rights, the burden of your brand. Okay. If you want customer loyalty, you got to be brilliant at the basics, and the across all customer service, world-class customer service companies. I think the one thing they do better than their competition is they consistently deliver good customer service, and how they do that is by being brilliant at the basics. So, that's why I like to call it the customer bill of rights that we're going to share with you, that every person in your organization clearly knows and follows 100% of the time. So would you ever expect to go to Disney and go up to, while you're walking the park, see a Disney cast member in full uniform on break and chewing tobacco and spitting on the ground near the front entrance where guests are walking by? I doubt it. Or would you ever expect to go to a Ritz-Carlton and be wandering around and see a Ritz-Carlton employee in full uniform and say, "Can you tell me how to get to the ballroom?" And the Ritz-Carlton employee would give a response like, "I don't know, I work at housekeeping." No way. One of the most effective ways to elevate your company's customer service is by instituting your own customer bill of rights.
Yeah, if anyone's going to wear your uniform or name tag or represent your brand, this is a list that you would develop for your employees to live by. So these non-negotiable standards are also referred to as the customer bill of rights, or the nevers and always statements that John just referred to. The critical importance is, if they do occur, you have to be confident enough that your employees always recognize and understand your nevers and always. And you can be confident that your employees would never do this and instead always do that.
Yeah. And if your company does nothing other than institute the never and always, and I never understood, no, Jess, I think grammatically it's never, not nevers, but I always say nevers. But anyway, If your company does nothing else other than institute the never and always list and makes everyone aware of them, if your customers rarely experience a never and consistently experience an always, then you are in the top 5% of customer service organizations. So we're going to share some great examples. Jess, I know, today you do so many of these with your consulting clients. How do you help them develop their list?
So I start by introducing the fact that there are some guidelines you have to follow when you're creating this list. So there's 3 criteria that your list needs to meet. And the first is that the statements in the list are typically 3 words or less. And that's just simply because you want to keep this list short, concise, easy to get out there to your team members, easy to understand. So 3 words or less. Keep it simple here. Number 2, they're black and white, no room for personal interpretation. So, always respond to emails promptly, right? Promptly to me may mean 2 minutes, promptly to John may mean 2 days. So you want to make sure that they're clear and concise, no room for personal interpretation allowed there. And they're crystal clear. They do not need any additional explanation. So they're also not stage specific. So regardless of which stage in the customer's journey, these should be applicable. So whether it's onboarding or providing the actual service or product or closing and, sending the final bill, it's not stage specific. These are things we never do, and these are things we always do.
Right. So having something like answering the phone with, "Thank you for calling the DiJulius Group. This is John. How may I," or "Who do I have the pleasure of speaking with?" Or greeting a customer when they walk through your door with a certain way or within 3 seconds. Those probably wouldn't be on your never and always list, because those, as you say, Jess, are stage specific, and they need to go in your journey mapping with when we check in a client or when we book an appointment or whatever we might be doing. Correct?
Exactly. Yeah. We want these to be applicable for anyone in our organization, regardless of their role, their responsibility. This is something we all are going to do. And that's going to give you that consistency piece that you spoke of before, with the top 5% of customer service organizations doing and having these things.
And we do it, with each other. We do it, obviously with our external clients. We do it when the FedEx man or UPS man walks in. It's, hopefully we start doing it at home. So this is great. We're going to give you or share a master list of, probably a dozen or more. But as Jess pointed out, you really want to create a shorter list of 7, 8 to 10 at the most. I mean, you can create an unlimited list, but when you have 15, when you have 20, you have none. It has to be something that's digestible, people can remember, you can test people on, you can audit people on. And so you just want to really attack the low-hanging fruit. So Jess, you want to start us off with some really good common ones?
Yeah. And I want to tell you that the best nevers and always are going to be ones that are specific to you, your people, and your industry. So keep in mind, it's the bad habits that you want to break. Those would be your never. And the always are the good things that happen that we just want to reinforce to make sure they're happening consistently. So I do truly believe that when I'm in a consulting engagement, the best ones on their list of 8 are the ones that are very specific to their organization. However, the ones that John and I are going to share with you in just a few moments are applicable to almost any industry, any organization, whether, what type of business model they have. These are applicable to almost all. So we encourage you to borrow these, to steal them, to tweak them. But again, the best ones are going to be ones that you create with your team in a workshop style format. All right. So,
and what I always like to say, Jess, is if you steal one thing from someone, that's called plagiarism. If you steal 10, that's called research.
Right. Exactly.
I'm the greatest researcher there is.
So we're going to give them to you in the format of never do this, always do that. But I have had clients change them to the always and never statements. Don't get too caught up on that. If you want to lead with the positive and course correct with the never, following the always, that's fine too. But we're going to give them to you in the format of never and always. Just as long as you have these, that's the main point. Whether or not you choose to do your always first or your never's first, don't get too caught up on that. So the first one I want to share that I think is probably the biggest aha that I see in consulting is never point, always show them. So we have a really great higher end grocery store in our area in Cleveland, Ohio, and you will never catch their people pointing you down an aisle. If I ask, where's the ketchup? They're not going to say, I think you can find that in aisle 3. No, they're going to take you to aisle 3 and say, we have these different types of ketchups, here they are. So that's never point, always show them. So that's what it looks like physically in a physical environment, but it could also be virtually. Do your team members ever virtually point? If someone calls and says, what are your hours on Friday? And your person who answers the phone says, you can find that information on the website. Now, I know, and I hope that's something that your team members would never do, right? They would tell you what time the store is open until, but are you virtually pointing in other places as well? If another department asks for a spreadsheet and you say, oh yeah, that spreadsheet's in Dropbox, right? I know it's in Dropbox. You know it's in Dropbox. I obviously am asking you because I need it. Can you just show it to me? So never point, always show.
Love that one. Another one is probably my biggest one is never say the word no. And I always like to, let people, answer, what do you think the always is? And, a lot of times people say, always say yes. And no. The always is focus on what you can do. So never say no, always focus on what you can do. No is a negative trigger. No is lazy. No is just not a good experience. Now, we also understand that in all our businesses, you can't always say yes. And yes wouldn't be in the best interest of the business or possibly your customer. So if I ask for something, can I have it right now? Can you fly out tomorrow, Jess, and do this workshop and you're booked with someone else, right? We don't want you to use no. We want you to focus on what you can do. And that might be answering something like, well, I'm not available tomorrow. I'm already committed with a client. I am available Thursday or next Wednesday. Or I can see if one of our other consultants is available. So you find the most common areas that are tough to say yes, or the most often that you maybe are saying no, and you focus on what can you offer as an alternative.
So the next one, I usually am successful in convincing my clients that this one deserves to be on their list, on their top 8 list that goes into their final version. So let's see if I'm able to convince you listeners right now. So never say no problem. Always say certainly, my pleasure, absolutely, you're welcome, I'd be happy to. So no problem is a big problem for 2 reasons. First is that it insinuates that it would have been a problem had you asked me 15 minutes ago. And second, it is two negative words, right? It's a double negative, no and problem. So when you cut this one, I recommend you got to cut cold turkey, right? You can't shift to no worries because that's essentially the same thing, right? It's the same thing as no problem. So this one is also very fun for my clients to implement because it's something that everyone is guilty of saying. So it's easy to point it out when you hear it. Right. And now you're going to hear no problem more often. Right. And just
15 times in the next 24 hours because you made people aware of it. I hate it, Jess.
Yeah.
It's your damn generation that's guilty of it. But no, everyone says it. And you're right. I mean, it's not a problem. You saying no problem means that it's not inconvenient to you. And when you're serving others, it's not about your convenience, it's about the person you're serving. So something I like that a lot of our clients have done that you're aware of, Jess, is they kind of have a swear jar, right? And, kind of help in a fun way implement the nevers and always. If you catch someone pointing or if you catch someone, saying no problem, you call them out and say, Jess, you just said no problem. And the person didn't realize it. And so they have to donate $1 or whatever it is to your charity or to the next round of drinks when, you go out as a group or whatever. So, and I think when you hear no problem in the next day, many times, you're going to realize that 9 out of 10 times, it's just now become a substitute for your welcome.
Right.
So your welcome is so much more professional.
Yeah. I feel that when you do implement this one, it pauses, it forces you to be in the moment because you pause and instantly you want to respond with no problem because it's something that we're comfortable with saying, but it really elevates the level of your vocabulary because you're pausing in that moment to think of how to respond differently. So just saying, certainly, my pleasure, absolutely, you're welcome, sounds so much better than leaning on no problem. So I do get a lot of pushback on this one initially with my clients before I explain it like you and I are now. But the major pushback is, well, why can't we say it? Our customers say it. It's common language, right, John? You're going to hear it 15 more times today. But again, my argument there is that it just elevates your level of vocabulary and conversation when you remove that from your language and your response. It forces you to be in the moment. It forces you to think of another response. And it's something that is really fun for my clients, like you said, with the swear jar. And it's a great one to put at the top of your list of 8 as well, because it's something that you could see in the moment, right? You either say it or you don't. It's so clear. You can't say that anymore. And here's what you say instead. So it's a fun one to put at the top of the list.
All right, let's go over some more. Never cold transfer, always do a warm transfer. And that's, most people know that, what that a cold transfer is. It's typically a call when you call up and say, may I speak to, Joe Brown? And all of a sudden, you're not sure if you got disconnected. You're looking at your phone and all of a sudden you get Joe Brown or you get Joe Brown's voicemail, or worse, you can get someone's wrong extension. And why you want a warm transfer, which is, may I tell them who's calling? It's John from the DiJulius Group. And so now a warm transfer is where they stay on the line and they tell Joe, it's John from the DiJulius Group. And I just found out that he just got back from vacation. So that's that warm transfer. And that it doesn't exist in over the phone, but that can exist in, face to face. You're at a doctor's office, you're going from a technician to a doctor, a receptionist to anyone, a nurse. Those should be warm transfers, right? Introducing, not, again, going back to point, you can go down, turn left, then turn right, and, room 3 or whatever that may be. And something that's really cool is a hot transfer. So we got cold transfers, which we don't want to do, never. Always do a warm transfer. A hot transfer is really cool. Do you know what that is, Jess?
I have a guess, but I'm interested to hear your explanation.
Okay. Amex is great at this. So you call up and you say, listen, I have a charge I want to dispute, or I don't know what this is, or, whatever your question is. And, the person that got the call may not be the person you need to speak to, or you may need a business account, you're a business account, whatever the reason is. So they said, I'm going to transfer you and I'm going to stay on the line. And they do. And then when your call is rectified, and maybe it could be, I need to do 2 things. One, find out what this charge is. And 2, I want to change my email. And so they say, all right, let's take care of this one first. And so they stay on the call, you speak to someone else. And then when someone else is done, the original rep is still on the call saying, Mr. DiJulius, was everything, taken care of, or we can do that other thing you wanted to do. Is that what you thought?
Not really. Actually, that took it the next step. I didn't expect it to go back, but I was thinking of a situation where I always feel like I get cold transferred and how frustrating that is being on the customer's side of it. Phone companies are so guilty of this. I swear every time we get our phone bill, there's something wrong on it. So you call the 1-800 number, you get transferred to another department. I have to explain my situation, explain my scenario. And then it's like your blood is just boiling every time you have to explain the frustrating situation again and again. So what you mentioned would totally alleviate that if they can just get the first part right. Oh my gosh, if they can transfer me back to the original and know who they're talking to. I mean, that is something that almost no one is doing. That would be incredible.
I'm going to jump on this next one, Jess, just because it's probably my biggest pet peeve. Never overshare. Always take care of it. And I just think they're all big. No problem. But overshare, I find so many people do in business, and it could just be just from talking too much. Like, we're having a Zoom meeting and I'm your client. I say, Jess, how you doing? I got a splitting headache. Well, I don't know if I needed to know that. Now I feel like I'm going to get cheated on this hour call, or whatever. Or a lot of times people overshare because, hey, Jess, I left a message for you yesterday with Nicole for you to give me a call back. And you might want to, say, hey, Nicole didn't give me the message. She doesn't give anyone the messages, right? And that would be oversharing, right? I don't need to know about your dysfunctionality that you have going on. Just take care of it, right? And I always say, listen, if you need to take someone out back and beat them, no, we're not endorsing beating. But if you need to, fix something internally, that's on you. But the customer doesn't need to know about that. So never overshare, always take care of it.
And a big one that I see, that one is in call centers where sometimes our systems are slow or our Wi-Fi is down. And that makes it seem like to the customer that we don't have our stuff together, right?
Yeah, I've walked by in through John Roberts Spa call center. Our listeners may not know, but we have corporate headquarters for all three of our companies, and the DiJulius Group and John Roberts Spa call center is there. And I'll be walking through, and they'll say, "Hold on, our computers are so slow," and it's like, make small talk,
right?
Ask them if they're enjoying the unseasonably warm weather, but don't let them know. I mean, they're going to think that, for the prices we charge, we can't, get on, a better system or Wi-Fi bandwidth or whatever it is. Doesn't mean don't tell your boss that you got problems. It needs to be addressed, but the customer doesn't need to know.
Yeah. And I think sometimes we feel like we're being transparent and it's a good thing, but we're airing our dirty laundry that doesn't need to be exposed to the customer. All right. So never say, I don't know. And the always isn't that you're going to know the answer to every question, because there are going to be issues or circumstances that come up and we just don't know. So how do you respond to that? Well, it's by always saying, let me find out. So we may not know the answer to every question, scenario, or circumstance, but we own it and take it as our own and find out the solution for the client or the customer.
Right. If you say, I don't know, and leave it at that, you're pointing again. I don't know. You can go check with, up front, or you can go check with the reception if you can get in next week, or if we have time to. That's goes back to pointing. So I love that. Never show frustration publicly. Be a duck. Always be a duck. So be a duck. If you don't know the metaphor or the analogy, is a duck is the most graceful, beautiful thing gliding across the water what no one sees or knows. It's paddling like hell underneath. And this is another one. This is kind of is a cousin to oversharing. If you just had a horrible call, with your last client, or something went wrong, or your computer's down, and now I'm your next customer, I shouldn't feel that tension. I shouldn't be punished because your last call, or because you had a fight with your significant other, or you got pulled over, a flat tire, or given a speeding ticket. Have you ever been on a plane where the pilot gets on the intercom and says, "Holy cow, we almost crashed"? No, right? I don't need to know that. If we're going down, tell me. But everything else, be a duck. Act like there was that turbulence was expected. So, and that's one that I found myself guilty of more than. And it's great when people call me out and let me know. My team members will say, "Hey, you weren't a duck in that situation," and they're totally right. And we're cheating the customer in their experience by showing that we're a little off our A game right now.
Yeah, and that one takes a little bit of explanation, because not everyone has heard the phrase "be a duck." So I do get pushback on that one with my clients, like, you said no room for personal interpretation or extra explanation. But once you hear that phrase, "be a duck," you don't forget it. So I like that one on when it makes the top eight to 10 list too with the clients. All right. Never accept fine or okay. Always have excellence as the standard. So have you ever asked a client or a customer or a team member, how was it or how was the experience? And it's like, it was fine. Or, it was okay. This is your opportunity to push for excellence and to inquire here. You have to be vulnerable enough to dig, but you have to ask that question, well, why? Or what could have been better? So excellence is the standard. And that's essentially going to be free consulting, right? Because they're going to tell you what could have been better. If you're vulnerable enough to ask that question and dig a little bit, the reward is going to be great. And imagine if everyone in your organization was doing that, having excellence as the standard and not accepting that mediocre, fine, okay.
Yeah. I mean, I like to say that, we get more complaints than anyone, and, I'm not proud of that, but sort of am, because, one, we dropped the ball and we're always trying to reduce that, fix that, eliminate that. But another thing is we solicit complaints, meaning, how is that workshop, or back to the other, John Roberts, how is your haircut? And if someone doesn't give us a superlative, yeah, it was okay. Okay sucks. Okay means let me pay, get the hell out of here, and go post on Yelp or Facebook or tell 10 people how it wasn't worth the money. But, you say, well, what about your experience wasn't excellent? And you tell, the business, now they have an opportunity to make it right, instead of letting you walk out and do brand terrorism. Never make the customer wrong, always make it right. And it's important. The customer's not always right, okay, but never make them wrong. It's just not a smart point to point out to them. A good example of this is, you might have a scheduled call with a customer, and they confirmed it in an email. And then you're like, hey, Jane, are you getting on our Zoom call? And she says, I had it for tomorrow at 3. All right. So if you're available tomorrow at 3, just say, apologize for the miscommunication. You're not saying who miscommunicated, but what I see often is someone will forward them the email that Jane said, 3:00 on Wednesday, let's say that's today, works. And, making someone wrong just isn't, the best thing to do. Just make it right. All right, Jane, whenever it works for you, and then you go on.
Yeah, I like that one too.
Need help getting brilliant at the basics? Contact Claudia at DiJuliusGroup.com and find out how the team of consultants at the DiJulius Group can help you get there.
So all of the ones that John and I just shared with you are the opposite of each other, right? Never do this, always do that. They go hand in hand. And I do believe that those are the easier ones to remember, because from a coaching standpoint with your team members, you're able to say what they did wrong and then correct with what they should be doing and what our new set of standards are. But I do believe when you're workshopping these, it's okay if some of them don't match up. Get them on the list, get them on the board. It's a workshop brainstorming session, and then we can play with what the opposite will be later on. So I don't want to prohibit your creativity by forcing you to make them match up. So the next few that we're going to give you are examples of what they look like when they're independent of each other. And a good example is a good example, right? So either find a way to make it fit your world or come up with that never or that always that correlates with it. But so a few always that are good to follow from a customer experience standpoint is to use their name at least 2 times. So maybe even 2 to 3 times in the conversation. Everyone's favorite word is their own name. So using their name really personalizes the experience and makes them feel special, makes the client or the customer or the guest feel like they're your only guest. So we want to make sure we're using their name 2 to 3 times in conversation.
Yeah. And to your point, Jess, these are when you're doing it, I recommend, it's okay in the workshop for, to not stifle based creativity. to have them independent. But I think when you finalize them, I always suggest having them match up. And here's why. Let's say you come up with 8 nevers and 8 always that don't match up. They're independent of each other. Well, that's really like learning 16,
right?
Versus if they match up, now you really, you only have to learn 8. And so if never point, it's, show them. If never say no, focus on what you can do. Those are kind of, one, together. And then the other thing with this list that we're going over, these are kind of what we like to call non-negotiable reoccurring. And so these are things that probably should happen every time you come in contact with a customer. And that's something that our clients love to create too. So it's kind of like an add-on to your nevers and always. These are like, I don't care how you come in contact with a customer, phone, email, face-to-face, whoever or anyone, you always use their name 2 times. Use your name 2 times. I love beat the greet. We used to say beat the customer, but people took it the wrong way. Beat the greet means no one should say hi to you first. Walking in, walking out, walking down the hall. And there's a 15-5 there with, it means 15, you come in 15 feet of anyone, you smile and nod. At 5 feet, you say something. Good morning. Welcome back. Great to see you. And it drives me crazy. Like how many times I go to an office, it could be a professional office, accountant, lawyers. I'm sitting in the reception area and the, receptionist greets me. I sit down and there's so many things that happen here, right? Like you forget that you're on stage, meaning I'm sitting in a waiting area, waiting for someone I've never met before. And then everyone that walks by or walks up to, towards the front, I think it's him. So I start, and they keep their head down, walk, on. And they didn't say hi. They didn't smile. They didn't say good morning. They didn't say welcome. And then the other thing is, the receptionist will start talking because I'm not standing right in front of them, or a client's not standing right in front. And they'll start talking about shit, they shouldn't be talking about. They might be complaining about the last client that just called and had an unreasonable request, or one of the lawyers is, having a bad day. And that's, so many things come from that.
Yeah. One other one that I've been implementing with my clients recently, I actually learned at the Customer Service Revolution a few years ago. So this has become an always that my clients have really enjoyed adding to their list. So if I were to tell you that 2 words were going to boost your business, increase your tips, your business by 12%, what would you think those 2 words would be? Now, he asked this question at the Customer Service Revolution, and our audience of 800 people all answered the exact same way. And they said, thank you. Everyone thought it was thank you. But we were all wrong. And the answer and the response to his question was the 2 words to boost your business by 12% are for you. So rather than saying, would you like some more coffee? The savvy waiter or waitress would say, I bought more coffee over for you. So the patron perceives the service to be more personal and thus tips accordingly, on average 12% more. So that's what I call easy money. It's a great way of increasing your perceived value with customers and coworkers without having to work any harder, right? I was already going to send that email to you, John, but yeah, of course I could do that for you. It's something that can be implemented in any business, internally and externally, with customers and clients. So I've been seeing my clients sneak that one into their list too, always, and then in quotes, for you.
I love that. Yeah, it does feel personalized. It kind of goes with the one that I love to, use is and it applies. You can use it in any communication, email, face-to-face, over the phone, Zoom. Is there anything else I can do for you today, Jess? And just by saying that makes whoever you're speaking to feel like they're it. Your world resolves around them, even though We might have 3 people behind them checking in, checking out, or, late for our next Zoom call, or 3 blinking lights of, people on hold. Just by ending that engagement by saying, is there anything else I can do for you today? In an email, over the phone, or in Zoom, face to face, just really makes them feel so important.
Yeah, so we actually have a list of nevers and always that are virtual or email specific, to your point, John. So never deliver bad news via email. Always, pick up the phone, have a conversation. And some of my clients push back on this one and say they need it captured in writing via email. And that's fine. That's fine to do that. But don't let email be the only communication platform for bad news then, if that's the case.
And something I would recommend in that case, Jess, is still have it, the call, but then follow up with an email clarifying. So, as I explained, unfortunately, we are unable, but here's what we can do, whatever that looks like. But yeah, I shouldn't receive bad news the first time via email, because I can't hear your empathy, how bad you feel that you can't come tomorrow, on a day's notice and clear your schedule. But I always say, when you're really crushing it is when you deliver. You can't say yes. So deliver bad news, but you do it in such a way that the client feels bad for you. Oh, Jess, that's not your fault. No, I'm not going to be able to sleep tonight. I wish I could, be there, but unfortunately I've been booked with this, workshop for 6 months, and they, have people flying in, but Jess, that's not your fault. It's my fault. I should have thought about it, way ahead of time. And that's, that's why you want to make sure you don't do it via email. Cause it's like, man, for all the money business I give them, and, I'm just hearing a no, an insensitive no in an email.
Yeah. So to piggyback off that one, don't respond with just that 5 words or less. Don't respond to an email as if it were a text message. And I know what you're going to say, John. It's my generation doing this, but it's everyone. I think everyone is, especially now, is just trying to get through there and unbury themselves from email. So a simple yes or no is sometimes just automatically what we do and how we respond. But try to personalize those as much as we possibly can, especially in the digital age. And I know you touch on that a lot in the Relationship Economy book. So more ideas there. But yeah, just not responding in 1 word or less, or 2 words or less.
Yeah. And really, using jargon or slang and treating email like a text message with you, like, whatever that, may be, using all caps. I know these are silly things, but a lot of times people don't know, what that is saying. Replying to all, that drives me crazy. So just reply to the person. Don't get, ever get anything off your chest in an email. That's really dangerous. If you can't, if you're not clear with your answer in the first email, anything, maybe pick up the phone and call them, just so, a lot of times when you, respond again, it feels to the other person you're just basically saying the same thing that confused them the first time. So you get on the phone and say, what is it that isn't making sense? And you can, again, hear empathy and that you really want to make it right for them.
Yeah. And that use all caps one sounds silly, but a lot of my manufacturing clients, the system that they're working in for shipping and logistics is already filtered for all caps. So when they copy and paste things from that screen and put it in an email, it takes a few minutes for them to retype the email so it doesn't appear in all caps. But it just, when you receive an email in all caps, it feels like the person's yelling at you, no matter if they are or aren't. So I challenge them to just make that shift, although it does take a few more moments to do that and make that change. It's better client experience. Yeah, I also like the one, always use clear subject line wording. Don't respond to the email in the subject of the email, right? Make sure that's clear. And then another one that I'm seeing a lot from my clients is you don't need to copy all. You don't have to copy every single person. Send the email to who's responsible for completing that task, and then copy those necessary. I'm finding that, again, in the digital age, we're trying to bury ourselves out of email, and not all information is something that every single person copied on that email needs to see. So how can we alleviate some of those pain points and, make it easier for each other and make it a better experience for the client too, right? The less we're in our email going back and forth about things internally, the more we can spend time in conversation and connecting with our clients. And that's the goal.
Yeah. And I know we've given you a ton in the book, the Customer Service Revolution book. There's, that list, as well as list of many of our clients that have incorporated these. And, we've had our clients such as Starbucks and Anytime Fitness and Celebrity Cruise Line. And the list goes on and on that we've helped create the customer service, the nevers and always list, and have just had remarkable impact with, creating that burden of the brand, as we like to say, and really elevating the consistency and being brilliant at the basics. The one thing I always caution my clients is it almost could be too easy, because, these are all common sense that we're talking about, and you can kind of be rolling your eyes saying, really? But you think about how often, even as a customer, the nevers get done to you, and you got to make sure that they aren't. And what's common sense to us may not be common sense to our new customer-facing employees, or they can slip into kind of a rut or laziness and start doing these things. And the other thing that's really important is when you create your short list of never and always, you don't want to just hand them out and post a poster in the back and say, here, don't ever do this. Then you need to have context to them. And so you want to, explain how you could be guilty, or how we at our company can be guilty of oversharing or showing frustration publicly. If you just say that, you think, oh yeah, Lindsay's guilty of that, she needs to be more. No, you could be guilty of that, and not calling someone out, but you might be, if you're giving the example, say, listen, I've been guilty of this, and you give the example. And give the example of different departments, so everyone doesn't think this just applies to the customer-facing employees. It applies to back of the house and visible service providers. But then ahas go off saying, oh, yeah, you know what? Now that you say it, I did do that recently on a call.
Yeah, I had a client the other day where it was a recap meeting. Our partnership expired a few months ago, right in the midst of COVID. And this was just a touch base call. And it was the president and the CEO of a title company in Chicago and his steering committee team. So his executive team on the call. And we were talking about, the nevers and always. And he said that these have really stuck with our team. And it's because we're huddling about them. We're constantly talking about them. And this has been embedded in our culture. And as each steering committee team member went around the Zoom room, and gave their update from their department, it was just such an aha moment for everyone. Like, wow, these are short, simple statements that really have changed our culture. And he said, this stuff has been embedded, and I just didn't know that. So it's awesome to see that if you work on this and get it out there to your people and coach them, and leadership has to be behind it and support it, then it works. It's simple. It doesn't take long to do. And I can't recommend this exercise enough, because I've seen it become so successful. This is the low-hanging fruit that every organization has the opportunity to do and create.
Yeah. And I think, as you always point out, Jess, the most important thing is don't just launch it. Don't just train to it. Play games, have people, test people, hey, if the never is, overshare, what's the always, do it in a huddle. If you have morning huddles, daily huddles, you can visit just one of these and say, all right, if the never is overshare, what's the always, someone answer. And, Jess or anyone who's answering in that huddle, have you seen an example where, you could be guilty of that, or where you almost were? And it just keeps, this all in the front of the mind. Test to it, hold people accountable, celebrate. there is no ribbon cutting ceremony to be in world class. It is a constant evolution. It's working out. It's brushing your teeth. You don't do it today and you're done. You have to constantly be visiting it. And there's a lot of fun ways to keep this at the front of people's mind. But you want to be a world-class customer service company, it starts with being brilliant at the basics. Anything else you want to wrap up with, Jess?
No, I think we covered it. I think I'm excited to hear the follow-up on this podcast and maybe some good examples of other client nevers and always that you listeners create and share with us.
Yes, great idea. Please share your best practices. We may be talking about you in our next podcast. And I appreciate you, Jess. You are the master at doing this and getting your clients to really have phenomenal results at creating their non-negotiable standards. So I want to thank Jess, and I want to thank all our revolutionaries for listening to another episode of the Customer Service Revolution.
Thanks for listening to and being part of the Customer Service Revolution. Join John, Jess, and the rest of the DiJulius Group live this October for the Customer Service Revolution Conference. Tickets available at customerservicerevolution.com. To hear more podcast episodes, subscribe now on iHeartRadio, Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you listen to podcasts.